So let's say you've been successful and you have found yourself an agent. Congratulations. What happens now? What does the actual relationship with the agent look like? And what should you expect? My name is John Gazvinigan. You're with Scholars to Storytellers, where we coach senior academics in the humanities and social sciences to achieve success with trade publishing, reaching wider audiences, how to get an agent, all those good things. We get you from, as we always like to say, a concept to an agent-ready proposal in 9 months or less. I am here today with the great Clive Priddle, who some of you are increasingly, I hope, familiar with. Clive has joined our team recently and is a fantastic resource to have on hand. If you haven't already watched our other conversation that we did recently, please check that out. That's a great place to start, where we kind of talk a little bit in broad terms about Clive and his career. Clive was previously publisher and editorial director of Public Affairs Books for about 20 years. And he's joined the Scholars of Storytellers team, and I'm really glad to have him. So welcome back, Clive.
Hello, good to be with you.
So we are talking today about what I sometimes like to call the morning after. You've got an agent, you're really excited, you can't believe it. You're excited now, you're fairly confident this great agent is going to get you a trade book deal. But you're also secretly kind of going, what does it even mean to have an agent? I mean, it sounds kind of cool, but like, what should I expect? What can I expect of them? What should they expect of me? What is this whole relationship going to look like? What advice would you give to an academic, especially a smart, accomplished academic who's already written two or three books with academic presses, but has an agent for the first time now? What should you expect? And what kinds of mistakes do you feel like we should be careful about?
Well, I think agents are really important, and the relationship with the agent is very important, and they're all a little different. So there's not a kind of one single experience that you're going to have, and it has to do with how the agencies themselves are set up. Some of them are very large, comprehensive companies. I mean, something as large as William Morris has a very different feel to an agent who is a solo practitioner, working from their own home office. So the mood of the agency is very much determined by, the scale, the personalities involved, and in a way, those factors are things that you should consider before you make the choice. And in the hopeful scenario in which more than one agent is reaching out to you, it's really important, I think, to ask yourself what you're looking for from the agent, because it is a little bit like, going and buying a car. They all operate by the same rules of the road, but they drive very differently. So, what experience you're looking for is something that's very important that you focus on and are clear in your own mind about what you're looking for. That said, it's all good. I mean, it's a huge step to get an agent involved in your work. It's hugely positive, and they are all, of course, guided by wanting to see you succeed on a commercial level.
Should you try to be best friends with your agent? I mean, I know some people that sort of sit there, I mean, literally see their agent every week. They have lunch, they talk about their ideas. It's like a very hand-holdy kind of experience. It's never been my experience. I've never had that kind of relationship with my agent. And yet, she's done the job, got the book sold, and, or is it something in between? Is it a kind of case by case?
I think it really is case by case, and again, it depends on what you want and what your agent wants, and probably you've got a sense of that from those very early conversations. Some agents behave more like lawyers or accountants. They're very professional, they're very technical, they're very good at explaining the technicalities of the business to you. They don't necessarily want to weigh in too hard on the creative side. They want to give you space as the writer to do that, and get on with it. Others take the exact opposite view, and they see themselves as creative partners in the process. And that is one of those, dividing lines, I think, when you're choosing the agent, that you really want to feel out, and ask yourself what you want. Do you want another, strong editorial opinion to help nurture the process, or are you very clear about what your book is? You know the destination, you know how you're going to get this done. What you're really looking for is somebody who's going to be commercial demon to sell it in as many ways as it can be sold. And when I say as many ways, of course, a book is not just a book. So some agencies are very good at exploiting, what contractually are known as subsidiary rights, the rights that go within the book contract but are beyond the book. So, and these used to be ebooks and audio rights, but increasingly it's dramatization, television, documentary rights, those other things which can be hugely beneficial to your profile and sometimes financially. And obviously they can all help sell the book. So some agencies put much more effort into that kind of activity than others. And you need to ask yourself what you want. If you can't imagine your book ever being one of those more visual products, then perhaps you just want somebody to work on the text with you. But if you think you've developed something that could in time become a 6-part or multi-part TV series, and there could be multiple series, then you're talking about a very different kind of ambition. So be clear about what you're hoping for.
What about one of the questions I often get is how, how much do I need to involve my agent in things that are perhaps more academic? For example, if I'm doing an edited volume of, I mean, this actually happened to me, did an edited volume of very academic articles, and my agent really wanted to be involved, and I don't know that all agents do. But is it that every written word that you sort of produce for the rest of your life is something that you need to kind of clear with your agent and run through them and get them involved with? Or again, does this also kind of depend on the philosophy of the agent?
A little bit, although I think as a common courtesy, it's a good idea to at least let them know what you're doing. And there's good reasons for that because, one of the things that changed in publishing contracts over recent years is there's a clause that got inserted that essentially said that the author had a responsibility to behave in such a way in public that their behavior was not detrimental to the prospects of their book. And this, you can imagine, what provokes this. And I'm not saying that writing collections of essays for academic presses is in any way behaving badly. Of course, it's not. But it does speak to this wider issue, which is if you are a commercial property, then what you do in public can have impact on the commercial success of the book that your agent is representing. And so I think it's a very good idea always to keep your agent in the loop. I don't think that every agent is going to want to be involved in that book of essays, but absolutely, I think they should know about it. And one thing they probably will say is, well, have you told your publisher? Or how do we explain this to the publisher? Because you're going to be committing a certain amount of time to this book of essays. And if you end up publicizing that book of essays, then are you actually cutting off a publicity opportunity that you want for your more commercial project? Because your publisher is going to have a view about that. So I think it's important not to imagine that you can have completely separate parallel existences, because my experience is that they don't stay parallel. The lines cross sooner or later. Even if you write under pseudonym, sooner or later, somebody puts two and two together and brings the things together. And I think it's just professional. I think, frankly, your agent's a professional. That this is their business. Their business is managing your career to maximize its financial success. Yes, they're also interested in developing your career as a writer, and in whatever way that means. But fundamentally, the management of the career is about making sure you get the most bang for your creative buck. And so they need to know this stuff.
And what about, let's say you've just signed on with an agent, you're very excited, and as soon as you start working together, the relationship doesn't go well, for one reason or another. You feel like they're not doing their job properly, or you just don't get along. Are you stuck with this person now? How do you navigate that?
I don't think so. I think if it's very early, I think you can always unstick yourself. But what I would say is before doing anything like that, just ask around. It may be that what the agent is asking you to do or the kind of conversations you're having are completely standard. It's just you didn't expect them for whatever reason. And almost every academic knows another academic who has successfully, made this bridge into trade publishing or is trying to do it. And you can cross-reference your experience with other people's and just say, look, I had this conversation with my agent. It felt a bit weird to me. Do you think it's weird, or is it actually completely normal? So I would definitely, not leap to judgment in terms of, how that relationship feels in the early stages before I'd asked around and just discussed my circumstances with one or two other people who've been through it. And then, yeah, I mean, it's possible that the relationship will not work, but I mean, in a way, the agent has every reason to make it work. Agents don't need to take on writers that they don't believe can succeed. So I think they go in like publishers too, full of hope and ambition, and as long as you share that with them, it should work. There shouldn't become some kind of dramatic revelatory conversation where you suddenly discover you're at complete odds with one another. I don't think that's going to happen. I think you'll have discussed enough beforehand that in almost every case you know what journey you're on.
Related to something you said a moment ago about sort of asking around your academic peers who have agents. This is one thing I think a lot of academics are not prepared for is when you do get an agent, suddenly all your academic colleagues kind of want to be introduced to your agent. Can you put me in touch? I'd like to write a trade book as well. This is something I think people sometimes are not ready for. I know it's something I've sort of experienced quite a lot over the years. Because quite frankly, a lot of your colleagues are great and they have fantastic ideas, but they're not commercially viable, and you know that in your gut, and you feel weird kind of introducing them to your
Yeah.
agent, and you also feel weird kind of saying no, I don't want to, because then you don't want to be that person that is being kind of weirdly protective and sort of coming across a certain way. Any advice about how to navigate that as an academic?
I think your advice is probably better than mine as that because you've been in that situation obviously much more than I ever have. I mean, the one thing I would say is I do think any agent author relationship is quite personal, quite individual, and so therefore the presumption that you can simply hand the agent over, like I'm loaning you a laptop or something, that's not really accurate. It doesn't work that way. And anyway, probably you wouldn't loan your laptop because of all the other stuff you've got on it. So perhaps it is like loaning a laptop. But so I think it's reasonable to say, well, this may not be the person for you, just because this person for me may not be the person for you, and also, the email contact or whatever you would give isn't actually going to be terribly meaningful. Your agent will get an email. Will they respond to it because the person puts your name in the maybe, but maybe not. In the end, the best advice you can give to somebody who wants to write for the trade and wants to get an agent is to not try and shortcut that process by using a personal reference, but to actually do the due diligence themselves and find the agents that they like the look of because they're representing the kind of book that they think they're writing. To find the people who have already got authors on their list with whom you would like to be associated, with whom you feel in communion in terms of your own writing. I've often thought of publishing and agenting publishers lists and agents lists a bit like a cocktail party. You can sort of see the names and then you can ask yourself, is this a party I'd actually want to go to? Or do I think this is just full of lovely, bright, sparky people, but I know nothing. I've got no conversational link with these people whatsoever. So find the people where you feel, they're your people, that you'd enjoy chatting with them. Because actually, joining an agency, like joining a publisher, you are joining a community, and in the best scenario, that community may actually be something that you leverage and can leverage later on to help succeed with your publishing, because you can ask some of those writers to look at your work for blurbs and things like that. So I think that's what I feel about the kind of can you recommend me to your agent is a bit lazy. In the nicest possible way, I think you can tell people that shortcut is not, it's not best practice. It's just not very good advice.
It's funny. I always handled it. I would say, well, what is it that you want to write a trade book about? And the answer would often, sometimes it would be a great idea, but a lot of times the answer would be, well, I'm interested, I'm working on colonial knowledge networks in, 18th century Peru and how that relates to the study of the history of the book. And I'd go, listen, I mean, that sounds really interesting, but, for commercial, whatever, you have to kind of reposition. And I'd start to have a conversation with them about, well, what about this? What about what aspects of that do you find interesting? And what would actually often come out of those conversations would be, oh, okay, so actually there's this other story that I think is embedded in it that is even more exciting from a commercial perspective. Maybe you should think about that before you approach an agent. And to be honest with you, that's how kind of how I ended up doing Scholars to Storytellers. I mean, it was just years and years and years of conversations where I was so struck by the fact that really brilliant academics, really accomplished academics, sometimes when were getting in their own way when it came to the way that they formulated, conceptualized, and framed their subject matter. And we're jumping the gun, putting the cart before the horse just a little bit and saying, "Oh, can you introduce me to your agent?" And I think the nicest way that I could ever handle that was sort of say, "Yeah, I'd be happy to, but why don't we have a conversation first about your topic?" And lo and behold, realized that that was something that I kind of enjoyed doing and wasn't bad at. So that's kind of what
Yeah.
led to all of this. Um,
No, I think that's right, and I think you can have a better conversation than many agents will feel they have time for, because they're getting a lot of people reaching out to them, and their time is under pressure. So, and it is difficult. Sometimes it's just difficult to see, if you're an agent, and a proposal comes along and it says, I want to write a book that looks at aspects of meteorology, railway timetables, the Balkans, and criminology. That can be a long way from Murder on the Orient Express. They just may not get it, because it requires too much sieving and sifting and splicing and dicing before you can kind of see it. So, I mean, the great advantage that academics have, is they usually have an inbuilt community of people on whom they can test their ideas, whether it's their peers or whether it's in a lecture environment, where you can see what people respond to, and you can see people sort of nodding off for meteorology and criminology and the Balkans, and you can see people switching on for Murder on the Orient Express. So I think that is more the prep work that the author needs to do before they get to the agent, in order that they set a different level of expectation with that agent. Because you offer the agent Murder on the Orient Express and they're already dreaming big things for you. You offer them the other one, and they're sort of thinking, well, I guess there might be a book in this, but it could be a long road to hoe. And immediately they've shrunk their expectation. They're not making a judgment exactly. They're just going by what they can see. And what they see is, a lot of high concepts, but not a lot of passion, or whatever it is. And it's just harder for them to imagine, you storming the Oscars. But maybe you can.
yeah.
So some of the work, I think, has to be done by the author first.
Absolutely. And conveniently enough, that's where we come in. So if you've enjoyed this conversation, check us out. Check out the website, www.scholars2storytellers.com. There are a lot more free resources like this on there, blogs and videos. And if you're interested in coaching, either with me or with Clive, we can get into much more detail with you along these lines, have much deeper conversations about your particular topic, maybe tease out that Murder on the Orient Express from what it is that you are kind of working on right now. So feel free to get in touch with us if you're interested. There's a form on the website for getting in touch. Otherwise, thank you very much, Clive, for this conversation.